Okay, well, this particular presentation was actually prepared by Ian Coates in the UK, and it's been passed on to me to deliver here. So I'm thankful for Ian. Some of the stuff is, how shall I say, a bit North Sea centric, but it's still good stuff. There's nothing wrong with it, and basically there's quite a bit of overlap I've noticed between what Mike has been saying and what Ian says. So we'll go through it anyway.
It's all working so well, Joe.
By the way, don't give me the app, by the way, because I'll break it. What's happened? Okay, sorry.
It's definitely operator right.
So the number of ships laid up. This was a few months ago. When did he actually do it?
This was May.
May. I think steadily improving. So we're all aware of the slump in the industry. So Ian has prepared this thing here about the number of ships laid up in April 2017. 28% of the offshore fleet, which is significant. And 36% of the PSV market, 33% of AHTs. The number is high, but it's still reducing. It is reducing, I guess. I live at the east end of Singapore, and every morning I take my exercise down to Pasir Ris Beach. So I get a good view of Loy Yang. And I'll be frank, I don't see a lot of improvement. I see 4 ships stacked there, and have been there for months. And before that, there was other ships stacked there. So you don't see a lot of activity in Loy Yang. But having said that, I do hear that over in the Labuan and in other areas, there is more activity. I think a number of operators are keen to move away from Loy Yang simply because of the price. It's not the cheapest place to do anything. So you guys will have your own experience of how the market is going. The oil price has stayed reasonably stationary over the last few months. Seems to be more dependent now on geopolitical factors than anything else. Oh, sorry.
That's me, Joe. Sorry. It's all right.
All right. So this is a breakdown over the world. So you can see Asia Pacific is there. And it's about 350. So there's a lot of scope there. And when we go to this one here, we discussed the ABI scheme, which Mike has discussed in some length already. So it has built up since 2015. I think I was at the second course that Ian ran in York with Hillary. And then it branched out. Ian came to Singapore the next year and sort of handed over to me in this area. But I've been to Australia with another guy. So it's sort of spreading its wings throughout the world. I do on average about two courses a year. I did one yesterday. So there were a few people who heard me talk all day yesterday. They'd be tired of my voice by now. And the delegate number is increasing. Ian talked at length about the quality of why we're doing this ABI scheme, and so did Mike. I'm an assessor, so I assess potential ABIs. Obviously, they don't know who I am, but you will never know who I assessed. And it's not necessarily, it's not quite often not this area. We spread them around. You can see in some of the eCMIDs that come in, they vary from the very, very good to the almost blank piece of paper. Just tick the box, tick the box, tick the box. Yes, 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 no. Yes, yes, no has to generate a comment anyway. But overall, I would say in the last couple of years, the quality of eCMIDs is definitely improved. Some of them are really good. They come in, they say, oh yeah, he did a drill, for instance, on such and such a date. and it says, yeah, saw the drill report, so many attended, really detailed stuff. There is a limiting factor there, and that's time. There's 100 and something questions in eCMID. There's more in MISW. It takes time, and time is often a thing we don't have on board a ship. And also you often have difficulty accessing the ship's people to provide you with the information. There was also a question there about expanding, which Ian dealt with at length on this slide, about expanding the eCMID. They talk about expanding it with more questions. Well, I think there's going to be, not resistance, that's probably the wrong word, but it's going to make life hard, because it's difficult enough at the moment with the eCMID as it is to do it in a day, which is pretty much all you get. And if we start putting in the other stuff about cyber security and the data protection, which is hot in Europe and hot just about everywhere, that wasn't mentioned on that slide, but I think it is being talked about now. If we start and the thing is going to get bigger and bigger. Now, we may say we can put our input into IMCA about what we, what ABIs think should be there or not be there. But expanding the document is going to make it harder to put a quality document. The more questions you ask, the more diluted it's going to get. And Ian said they're going to be talking to IMCA about actually condensing some of the other stuff. If they put this in, they'll shrink something else. I don't know how that'll work. That'll be up to IMCA. But time is a factor. And as I say, in assessing eCMIDs, we do get very, very good ones. We get some that are just not suitable. And if I was a client accepting that, I would basically say, I paid my money for what? Nothing. So there is a variation. But overall, we've achieved what we've been trying to achieve. Pizza Man, I think, has largely gone away.
Yep.
Those days are pretty much gone, because you can't get into the system now without an ABI number, a password. You get it, if you go in and try and access it, you won't get it. Not to say there is no paper eCMIDs going around, there are. And there are clients that still ask for a paper eCMID. They don't want it uploaded. That's a problem for IMCA. As the ABIs, if the client asks for it, the client gets it. Really, there's nothing else you can do. It may be incorrect, but if the client, if you don't give it to me, go somewhere else. Simple as that. So they still ask for paper for whatever reason, and it does have the drafts on it. So the major operators like the Shells, Exxons, and all that of this world will probably reject it because it's got draft written across it in a watermark, downloaded PDF version. So that will tend to reduce that effect. But there are still many operators who only want to take a eCMID or MISW. I did one 3 weeks ago in Singapore, an MISW, and that's what they wanted. They wanted a paper version. They did not want it in upload. Now, I don't really think this has anything to do with £100 and £50, because that's, in the big scheme of things, it's not a lot of money. It was a bone of contention when it was introduced. There was some very heated emails went around about it, but it's largely gone down now. It's not a big thing. Some of the smaller ABIs and one-man bands felt it was an imposition on them to go and collect tax with IMCA sort of thing. But it's kind of disappeared, I think. So we've got the pretty much, I think these numbers vary a little bit with what you had, but it's an ongoing process. I've got 3 assessments on my desk at the moment. So there's some of the ones that's in process going on. Have we increased the quality? Improved the quality, not increased. Improved. Yes. Are we looking with better eyes and ears? I hope so. At least the eyes and ears that's looking now have been assessed. They've got good eyes and good ears. They know what they're looking at. Are we keeping up with changing legislation? Difficult, especially if we discussed yesterday at a course. If you're a very, very small company or a one-man band, keeping up with legislation is a bit of a challenge sometimes. You don't always know what's going on. The bigger companies have personnel to track those things. Are inspections still being undertaken by non-AVIs? Don't know. I suspect so. They're out there. I know of one that advertises himself as an accredited AVI inspector, and I know for a fact he isn't. But he doesn't know I'm an assessor, so he's not. But he advertises. He also advertises, by the way, as an accredited OVID inspector, and he's not. So
have you told us about this, man? Have you told us about this?
No. I've got friends. So these people are still out there for sure, but nothing like it was, say, 5-6 years ago, where just about anybody could rock up at a boat, a ship, and attempt to eCMID. At that time, I was working for a diving company, and some of the eCMIDs that came in, you know, they didn't actually come. I was QHSE. They didn't actually come to us, but I used to make it my business to go and flip them over and have a look. They didn't want me to look at them in case I said it was no good, of course. They really were a bit of a joke. Are paper versions being used? Yep, we've already said they're being used. No doubt about it. I've got them on my computer. Otherwise, I couldn't have done that job a few weeks ago. So I'm quite honest about it, but that's something that I don't know how you'll resolve. Higher standard of inspector, yes. More companies only using AVAs. You mentioned that. I think the more so with the renewables sector, kind of tied down to AVIs. Australia, I believe, somebody told me, is OVID type territory. Yeah. So, but for a while, OVID was very much in the ascendancy, and eCMID was going down. It seems that it's sort of meeting of the ways now.
And there's a coming together of the two organisations as well. There is a discussion going on, which is positive.
Yeah, when OVID first came in, I was actually on the IMCA SEL committee, the safety committee at that time, and there was some very heated debate going on. I wasn't involved in it, but we knew about it at the meeting between OCINF and IMCA. There's some quite heated debates going on about OVID taking over. But I understand now from going to meetings that there is a coming together of IMCA and OCINF to, I don't know what the end product will be, but there are discussions ongoing, I believe. Better report writing? Yes. As I said, the eCMIDs I see are much better, generally. Quicker turnaround? Possibly, I'm not sure about that. Time taken to inspect the vessel reduced? I don't think so. I mean, the vessel is a vessel, and you inspect it, and I don't see how you can reduce the time without missing something out. So it's as simple as that. The actual vessel and the inspector hasn't changed. All we've changed is the system reporting. So that really hasn't changed. It's going to take as long as it takes to inspect the vessel. You could get rushed through, of course. Very often, as AVIs know, you go to a vessel that's got a whole lot of other things going on the ship at the time. Storing, changing crew, mobilising for the next job, doing surveys. So it's a challenge for everybody, not just the AVI, the ship itself. Reduction in the inspection fee, I don't expect to see that. I think it will stay as it is. I don't know if IMCA, first time I've seen that, has there been a plea to reduce the fee?
There's always a plea to reduce the fee.
Yeah. I tried to reduce my fees to IIMS at the moment. Who owns the document? Well, the document, the database is owned by IMCA. But the control of the document is with the operator once it's uploaded. And we discussed this yesterday. When do they pay? In the database, when the API uploads it, right, he's got nothing else to do with it. That's it, finished. He can't change anything, nothing. It then goes to the operator. He's got 30 days. At 21 days, he gets a reminder that any changes he wants to make, and fix that, and his certificate is now today, whatever, he can do those changes. But on 30 days, it gets published. Now, I guess that if he hasn't paid the bill in 30 days, it'll be removed from the database. I think that's what will happen. I don't know. I don't think they would publish unless they have the money. So I presume there's a link there somewhere, but I don't quote me on that. Lots of excellent colds and warm stack still. Reactivation, that is starting. I'm personally not involved, but that's going to be a challenge for everybody bringing these ships out. Ian was in China and it was 30, I don't remember which port it was. And there was 38 brand new ships sitting there. Never been out. So, and that's just in one port in China. I understand over in Batam, anybody here probably knows better than me, there's 400 plus ships in Batam not working. And worldwide is somewhere in the region of 4 to 5,000. So, the sort of general, as other people know better than me, but the general consensus is that anything sort of 10 years and over, it's been cold stacked and not stacked properly, probably never going to see again. It's going to go to the scrapyard. It's been too expensive to bring out, and there's newer tonnage to use. And technology, of course, in that time has moved on as well. So if a ship has been stacked properly, they'll probably come out first. But remembering to stack a ship is an expensive operation, and when they were stacked, it was hard times. So whether they did the right thing for their electric motors and their tanks and their fuels and everything, their lubrication, who knows? Plus the accommodation. One would imagine that some of these ships' accommodation over in Batam would be pretty interesting to go in there. I am vegan, but I could imagine. For instance, domestic freezers, if they haven't been properly cleaned and stacked, many of them, I'm not a hygiene person, but many of them I would imagine you're going to have to rip out the insulation and start again. But it hasn't been properly stacked because it would be just right. Not to mention the pilfering and the unknown visitors that have been on to take bits and pieces away. I'm not sure how security is over there. So there's a lot of challenges with reactivation. Completion of bills, as I say, there's 38 ships at that yard that Ian was in, and many more throughout the world, I suppose. Increased vessel requirements in oil and gas and renewable sectors. There was a program on television last night about the heat wave that's going through Europe. And I know we all talk about global warming, but this was interesting because this guy, who was, some guy in the UK, was saying that global warming is not this, it's actually this. So this global warming is going to hit us quick, if that is what's happening. Remember, forest fires in California, heat waves in Europe, violent storms and rains. So the climate's changing for whatever. So he said it's not a straight line. So where people thought they had to the end of the century to fix it, according to this guy, you don't. So that will affect oil and gas, and then in turn transfer of vessels to renewable. Don't ask me, but that's what appears to be going to happen. We're going to have to go renewables in the end. Vessel rates, I don't know what the vessel rates at the moment. I'm sure the people in this room would do. More inspections, yes please. We need them. And increase inspector rates. Yes, please, we do that. Most of the inspectors, or at least the small inspectors, companies, standalone guys, over the last 3 to 4 years have been struggling, and some of them for sure have gone out of business and won't be back. Any questions? So I've tried to cover all the points that Ian did. So in summary, the ABI scheme is working. No doubt about that. It's working well. Ongoing process. The app. I better not touch the app, by the way.
Don't touch the app, Jim.
I break out trying things like that. So the app, and then the quality of eCMIDs that I see coming through for to be assessed in the last 2 years have improved. And there is a better thing. 2 or 3 years ago, they were much poorer. And some of them were using eCMIDs from way back, version 8. And you can actually see how bad they were. They were using it as their evidence. So, but overall, I think the scheme is working quite well. And it's a living thing. It will keep improving, I hope. And yeah, the thing is competency as well, because a lot of the older people, not me, but the older people will be getting out of this soon. There's been a gap in the industry, and the same will be true on ships. There's going to be a competency issue of competent people, and it is going to be an issue. It always is. There's going to be a bigger issue finding competent people to sail the ships, and competent young people to come into this business and do inspections. It's going to be something that's going to be generated not instantaneously, but it's on the horizon. Okay.
It's also a challenge for marine surveying generally. Where the next generation of marine surveyors is going to come from, I think, is not clear. And the traditional route in to that career has changed. So anyway, that's a big debate for another day. Any questions for Joe? I mean, it's rare you have the chance to talk to a trainer and an assessor. So if there's anything you want to know,
Samson always had a question for me.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, my name is Samson from Nigeria. Yes, I have a couple of questions and then some thoughts I want to bring forth for our discussions or some explanations for you guys. Now, after the inspector has uploaded the report on the database, the operators go ahead and do close out on some of the findings. How would they put this close out on that website? Are they able to create, and I've not seen how this close out will be put in that same report. I don't know if is my question clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So how will this be done? Close out, whether it's being done by the API or it's being done by the operators. How would they put this on the website in the database?
Well, the ABI doesn't do closeouts as a rule, not on that, because once he's uploaded it, it's out of his hands. Unless the only way an ABI would get involved in closeouts is if the operator comes back and asks him, or more likely the operator's client would come back and ask him to check the closeouts. But the ABI, once he's uploaded it, it's out of his hands. It's gone. That's why yesterday, if you remember, I said, before you upload it, make sure that it's exactly as you want it to be. Because once it's uploaded, even INCA, the IT people in INCA, are very limited what they can do to change it. So once you upload it, it's gone. So the operator, he can go in up to 30 days. He can go in and he can say, for instance, if you said the drill question, let's go back to that. So has the ship done drills in the last whatever the questions, I can't remember. But if the ABI has said no and then put his comments, the master couldn't, or the ship could not produce evidence of a drill within the statutory requirements, right? That's a very bad negative, right? So once he uploads it, he can't change it. That's what he saw. It's subjective. So if the operator then gets onto the ship and say, hey, Cat, what's happened to the drills? Okay? But they should know anyway, because they should be getting the drill report every so often. So they would do a drill, they could then go in and say, the drill was done on such and such day. They can go in and make that change. So they can put it in.
Within 30 days. After 30 days, what happens?
After 30 days, it's still the operator can still do it. The only difference is at 30 days, it goes public. It goes onto the, it's available. So the operator gets it, the AVI uploads it, whenever, 3 to 4 days. The operator gets a reminder at 21 days that he's got another 7 days to make any changes or corrections or whatever. 30 days, it's in. So everything on there is on the database. So
Okay.
after that, he can then let the client come in, because he can restrict who looks at it. Not everybody can go in there. So if he's got a client who wants to look at such and such a ship, he can allow him in to look at the eCMID or MISW for that particular ship.
Okay. If anything is being done by the way of closeout after 30 days, it's going to be a fresh report.
Not necessarily. Because what I said yesterday was the certificate issue is one. Because certificate, there are, what did I say, 52 certificates on the average vessel.
Yeah.
That's the statutory certificates, that's not including certificates to equipment and dive systems, all that stuff. So if you go in onto a ship and no preparation has been done, you sit down in the office and the chief mate says, here's the certificates, you're going to be there for a day doing certificates. So that should be prepared beforehand. But a good operator will keep his certificates up to date. He would be using this system to push his ship commercially. So he can say to the next time, you can go and look at these 2 ships, if you like. But it's no good in looking if half the certificates are up to date. So a good operator will keep the certificates up to date.
Okay, that's fine. The next aspect I want to talk about is about ships and the regulations in relation to eCMID. Now, we'll find out that the eCMID is evolving. Changes are being done, updates are being done with reference to changes in regulations. New ships are being built, new technologies and all that. In some parts of the world, for example in Africa, Nigeria specifically where I am from, we still have ships, offshore vessels built in the 80s that are still working. I have inspected several of them. I still do. Now, now we have a eCMID that is modern, so to say. Sometimes when I go on these vessels with this modern checklist, eCMID for example, I am using this checklist to inspect a vessel that was built in 1980. I see a lot, so many things are wrong, and to me, I feel these checklists are not appropriate for this kind of ships.
No, the ship's not appropriate for the checklist.
Okay, but yet,
if the ship goes out of date, there's nothing you can do, Samson. If a ship goes out of date, it goes out of date.
Yes,
for whatever reason.
For example, some majors, Shell, Chevron, Total, they still use them. They still use these vessels, and they still want us to do eCMID.
But that's up to you. You only, as an AVI, you report what you see. It's up to the operator and the client to decide what to do with it. You're only giving them what you see on 1st of August, right? It's what you see on the 1st of August, it's what they get.
Yeah,
If the ship's old and out of date and the certificate's out of date and it doesn't have fancy technology or whatever, that's really not I understand your position because they probably push you to give it a good eCMID.
Yeah, and then you finish the inspection and you have more than 100 MCs, more than 100, no.
That's up to them to fix the MCs.
Okay, well, maybe this is discussions that can be, I don't know the position of IMCA IMS in the light of this.
IMCA don't make rules.
Yeah, I know.
IMCA provide, that's all, they've always been very clear about that. IMCA provide guidance notes. They've always very specific. They are not a regulator. And it's a misconception by some people that they are the regulator because they're so wide in the industry, but they are not. You don't have to follow. You don't want to. You don't have to follow IMCA's guidelines because you probably won't get a lot of clients in the industry. You know.
Anyway, that's just
Right.
my
I
experience.
can't help you with your old ships. Scrap them, Samson. Scrap them. There's plenty of new ones around.
Question at the back? 2 questions.
Joe, ships in layup, obviously we all know that there's a lot of them. And, you know, the story is that when these things are going to be reactivated, things are going to move quite quickly. Is there any sort of proposal from IMCA or anybody else on having a supplement to an eCMID or anything like that to audit vessels that have been reactivated? Or do you think that's a good idea or a bad idea?
Oh, I think it's going to be an issue. It's been discussed at IMCA, the Asia Pac meetings a couple of times about laid up ships and reactivations, DP reactivation in particular. But it's been discussed. But as far as I'm aware, IMCA are aware of the issues. Haven't heard of IMCA themselves producing anything to a guidance note for reactivation. I haven't heard.
I know they've got a work group and they are proposing to issue some guidance on reactivating vessels, but I'm just wondering whether there's any plans to have
Included in this?
eCMID to include a supplement possibly of a ship that has been in cold layup and maybe enhance some of the things that the AVI needs to look out for.
I haven't heard of it. Having said that, if you're an AVI and you're going to a ship that's been stacked for 3 years, you've got to look at it with different eyes than if it's a ship that's operational. That's no doubt about it. It'll take you a lot longer than an operational ship, a ship that's coming in. And I touch on this afternoon. There'll be issues with competency, safety management systems in the vessel. I can see this being quite an area that where a ship's operational and the crew have been using the same SMS for the last whatever, and they're all used to it, and the company is used to it. But some of these ships, when they come out, will probably change owners because the old owner's gone out of business. The bank owns it now. That would be a few of them. So there's going to be issues there, and I think all I can say is if I was an AVI going on board a ship that was being reactivated, I would be taking a lot longer and I would be looking a lot closer at everything before I would be finished, and I'd be charging a higher fee. Definitely.
Alex?
I think it was more of a comment than a question.
Yeah.
You made the point about the impending lack of expertise within the industry generally, which I wholeheartedly agree with across the surveying community. I think the traditional challenge that I have seen though is that as we move to more accreditations, which is a good thing to maintain standards, what I've seen across a number of accreditations is that the barrier to entry is a required experience base that you can't have when you enter the industry. And therefore, the need for mentoring schemes and maybe an intermediary level for younger people coming through the process that may not be, as you say, coming from the traditional routes that we say, is where it's lacking at the moment. And you see time and again on the applications, you know, needs 15 years of experience of having surveyed this particular type of boat, etc., which is good for maintaining the quality for the client, but means that you're going to have this continual gap in new people entering the industry because they physically can't get in, they're caught in a catch-22.
You mentioned words that are very dear to my heart, such as mentoring. We have spent the last 2 years within IMS trying to see if we could formalise some type of mentoring scheme for surveyors. And we do a bit of that, but it's ad hoc. And we're also working on, I'm going slightly off the tangent here, but we're working on an apprenticeship scheme, which would be UK government funded, I have to say we're only operating in the UK, but it could work elsewhere. We actually have some government funding to run an apprenticeship scheme, but the problem is who's going to give the people the jobs? And that's what we haven't yet worked out. So, and again, if you come through an apprenticeship scheme, you do 3 years, you might do some of that time on a ship, you might do some of that time in a boatyard. So you're picking up some good practical skills. How do you then bridge that gap, which is what you're saying, and take those people to the next level? So, you know, you can come out with that, some experience, but I would still be very, very concerned about those people being let loose on their own into the industry. And, you know, I've been doing this role now for 4.5 years, and what absolutely horrified me when I arrived in this industry is the complete barrier to entry for a surveyor. Anyone can set up put a sign up outside the house and say, I'm a marine surveyor. And if you look in the UK, I don't know how it is in the rest of the world, in the UK, if you want to be a housing surveyor, and as somebody said the other day, well, nobody, you know, houses don't sink and generally people don't die in houses, so you could argue it's perhaps slightly less important than being a marine surveyor. It's a 5-year stint, education stint, but anyone can be a marine surveyor, and that's frankly wrong. But we are looking at that. And yes, accreditation is something that IMS is getting quite passionate about, something our members are pushing us to do, is something the industry is pushing us to do. And there will be an announcement of that fairly soon. But I totally agree with you. It's that mentoring that's still lacking. And again, that's a challenge, because are you going to mentor a competitor? No, you're not. You're not going to do that. That's human nature. So then that presents another challenge. So therefore, you wait until people are 70 and retire, and then they say, well, you know, I wasn't looking at you, Joe. I wasn't looking at you, honestly. And then they say, fine, I don't mind now. I'm happy to mentor, you know, younger people. It's a real problem. And it's one the industry's got to get to terms with, because otherwise there's going to be a problem in 10, 15, 20 years' time. I think we should break for coffee.
I'll just say one thing. Change comes when you have a major accident.
Yes, of course.
You look at all throughout the history of the marine industry, have a major accident, you get change. So let's hope there's not. That's not what I want to see, but it does bring change very quickly and very radical change. Okay.